We're going to talk about a very important halachic topic, and the question is that we're going to talk about is, when do dishes need to be dipped in a mikveh? That's the question that we're going to talk about. Before we start our discussion about dipping dishes in the mikveh, I just want to distinguish between two different activities that we do in order to prepare cutlery, sometimes crockery, to prepare them for eating. One of them is hachsharat kelim, and the other one is tfilat kelim. Hachsharat kelim is from the word kasher, means to turn something that's not kosher into something that is kosher. So if, let's say, I have a knife that I used for milk instead of for meat, and I want to transfer it back to its original usage, so I need to lahachshir. I have to kasher it. I have to make something non-kosher kosher. And the laws of lahachshir are normally like to dip something in boiling water. Sometimes we use like Bunsen burner, a blowtorch, and you make things red hot. Those are the activities that we often see before Pesach on the streets of Jerusalem, with all those like the fire and the big glass and the boiling water and the blowtorch. That is hachsharat kelim, something that's not kosher, making it kosher. Today we're not talking about hachsharat kelim, we're talking about tfilat kelim. Do you see that on the top of the sheet? Tfilat kelim, the tbol is to dip kelim into a mikveh. And sometimes you have to do both. Sometimes you have to lahachshir, and sometimes if I buy a new item, so I don't need to kasher it because no one's ever used this fork before, but you may well need to dip it into a mikveh, but toivel it beforehand. So it's hachshara in boiling water and tfilat kelim in mikveh water. So that's what we're going to be talking about, tfilat kelim. Okay, joy, happiness. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the history of tfilat kelim, 3 sections. First thing, the history of tfilat kelim, which is quite easy because it's mentioned explicitly in the Torah. Tfilat kelim, this dipping of kelim in the mikveh, is something that's mentioned explicitly in the Torah. So we're going to look at the source in the Torah, and then the halachic debate until we get to the practical halakha. So the source of the halakha, and then practical halakha, and then the final point, like symbolism of the halakha. So background, details, and then like symbolism. Is that okay with everybody? Yeah. Let's start with part 1. Part 1 is source number 1. Apart from, it doesn't say source number 1 on the sheet, but can you see it's the very beginning of the page? It is in Bamidbar, Perek Lamed Aleph. Bamidbar, Perek Lamed Aleph is right at the end of the 40 years in the wilderness. And what's happening over here? There was a battle between the Jews as we enter the land of Israel. You know, there was a battle with Midian, with Edom, with all these nations that we encountered right at the end of the Torah before we enter the land of Israel. And then obviously afterwards with Yehoshua after we enter the land of Israel. So this is already after the death of Aharon HaKohen. The Torah tells us, what do we do about the booty? Is that the word? Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Yes.
But so what do you do with that? How can the spoils? Yeah, I prefer that word. Thank you. How can I take the spoils from the battle and make it appropriate for us to use in halakha? Okay. Okay. Look at this. Vayomer Elazar HaKohen El Anshe HaTzava Habaim LaMilchama. So Elazar HaKohen told to the soldiers who are going to battle. Zot chukat haTorah shetzivah Hashem et Moshe. This is the way to do things. That is not a great translation, but will work for now. This is what you need to do. That's Pasuk Yud 21, Kaf Aleph, Kaf Bet. Ach et hazahav, gold. Kesef, silver. Nechoshet, bronze. Vet habarzel, et hivdil, vet ha'ofaret. Do you know what ofaret is? Ofaret is lead.
Yeah.
You knew that. That's why that's called an iparon, because it's got lead in it.
Oh, okay.
It's the same word. Kol davar asher yavo ba'esh. Anything that you normally cook with fire, ta'aviru ba'esh. You need to kasher it.
Yeah.
That's a blowtorch in fire for taher, and then it is pure, and then you can use it. Ach b'meinida yitchata. V'chol asher lo yavo ba'esh ta'aviru b'mayim. And anything that didn't go by fire needs to be dipped in water. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Now look at this over here. Anything that isn't used by heat or is fire. Cohn, like cups. Anything that you use, you don't, this cup, you probably would use this cup with something hot. But stuff that wasn't used for something hot, but they used it for something cold. You follow? So something that was used for any vessels that we took as spoils that were used for hot food, you need to kasher it before you use it. But anything that was only used for cold food doesn't need to be kashered. Why does it not need to be kashered if it was only used for cold food? Very good. Very good. Excellent. There's a general principle in halacha, kebol'o kach poroto. Just as something is absorbed, so too it extracts it. So if I have a spit for a barbecue, is that what you call it, nachon? Yeah. So that's boiling hot. So to kasher a spit, you have to put it in a blowtorch.
Yeah.
But let's say I have a cup, then I only use it for cold water, or cold whatever I'm using it for. So to kasher the cold, I wouldn't need any fire because the non-kosher food never came in hot, and therefore it was never absorbed. Therefore the vessel never absorbed it in hot. So if it wasn't absorbed in hot, I would think that's fine. You don't need to do anything at all, right? However, the Torah tells us you need to put it taviru b'mayim. You have to put it in mikveh water.
Rabbi.
Yes.
It's a simple question. Few weeks ago, we cook, we like for example the dam.
Blood.
Yeah, you took the like I don't know how can I explain it. With using manga.
Using a
grill. Yes, a grill.
Oh, yes, grill.
And
yeah.
You fire. You cook the meat when you took the dam, but the dam penetrated the manga, the one, and the one is already used is not kosher. But this it's impossible to koshering the grill to use again or.
I don't want to go too much into the halachot of how to kasher things today, but in general, it's normally like this. There are a few principles, and if you follow those principles, you can kasher them. You can kasher something. If, let's say a fork that I used for, like it was a non-kosher fork, and I want to use it as a kosher fork, so I have to make sure that the fork is absolutely clean. So let's say with a grill, you have to make sure it's absolutely clean, and then you have to use whatever method it absorbs something non-kosher. You use that same method to extract. So if it was used on a barbecue, so then you would need fire to extract, because whatever wasn't kosher was cooked with fire. You would use fire to extract whatever was absorbed. But if it was not absorbed in fire, but rather in cooking, like it was in contact with boiling water, so then you'd need to put it in boiling water in order to remove the non-kosher item. But in general, everything is kosherable as long as it's clean. So I'm only removing the non-kosher from that's absorbed, but not something outside. I'll give you another example. Let's say you have a fork, a piece of cutlery that's made up of two pieces. You know, sometimes you have a fork where you have like the handle and then the top. You follow? Now, sometimes because it's made up of two pieces, sometimes food could get trapped at that point where the two meet each other, and I can never be sure that I could get out all the food from there. Since it's not necessary, sometimes it's impossible. I can see it, but I just can't get it out. So I wouldn't be able to kosher that because it's not absolutely clean. But if it was a one piece of cutlery and it's clean, then I would use whatever method works. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Now so this is the Torah is telling us that there's really two types of items. The items that were used for hot, and items that were used for hot use whatever method. With whatever method they absorb something non-kosher, I use that same method in order to extract the non-kosher.
Yeah.
And then a vessel that was only used for cold and not for hot, what does Rashi say about that? Matbilin, you dip it in water. And the Gemara will explain what that means. V'dayo, and that's enough. V'davka klei matachot, and that's talking about specifically metal dishes. Okay, so that is the Torah. The Torah, the source of the idea of dipping kalim in the mikveh, the source of that is from the end of the book of Bamidbar, when the Jews were capturing the nations around the land of Israel, and they were wondering what to do with the spoils. Joy? Okay. Now, based on what we've said, let's look at how the Gemara then codifies this idea. So it starts with a Mishnah. This is in Masechet Avodah Zarah, quite appropriately, right? Because we're talking about transferring it from non-Jewish ownership to Jewish ownership.
Yeah.
Okay. Halokeach kli. Somebody kli tashmish min ovdei kochavim, a utensil. Somebody who takes a utensil. Ed shedar kol lahatpil, that which is dipped in the mikveh, yatpil, dip in the mikveh. Lahagil, that which is dipped in boiling water, yagil, you dip it in boiling water. Lila ben ba'or, with a blowtorch, use a blowtorch. Hashpud v'ha'ach salah, mila ben ba'or. That's because that's the you know, like a, what do you call them? What do you call it? What, you know, when you put the metal rod that you use on a barbecue, what do you call that?
Oh, I know, yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know, but I don't know.
Okay, well, that doesn't matter as long as you know what we're talking about. You know what I'm talking about?
Like the barbecue stick? Or...
Yeah, exactly. That. So that's Yaviru Ba'ish, obviously. Okay. That's a Mishnah. The Gemara says, V'chulan tzrichim tefillah ba'arba'im sa. When the Torah tells us you need to dip something, you need to dip it in a body of water with 40 se'ah. 40 cubits of water. Minoani mili, da'amakra, kol davar sheyavo ba'esh, taviru ba'esh, v'tahir. V'osif lecha katuv tahara acheret. Afilu kelim chadashim b'mashma. Even new items. So new items that we have no problem of koshering them. A new item, I need to dip it in a mikveh in order to transfer it from the ownership of somebody who's not Jewish to the ownership of a Jew.
But
is that
Jewish to Jewish is okay?
Correct. Yes.
And if a Jew has a company that non-Jews work in,
that's also okay.
That's also okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
but
like unlogical, but it's halakha. So,
yeah. However, in general, there aren't a lot of Jewish companies making cutlery. Even here in Israel, it's all imported. So for all intents and purposes, whenever you buy new cutlery, you should dip it in the mikveh. Yeah. But we're going to go through what needs to be dipped and what doesn't need to be dipped. Okay, so we went to the pasuk. The pasuk gave us the context, And then the Gemara told us that it talks about dipping in a mikveh, the mikveh with 40 sa'ah. Let's go now from the Gemara to the Shulchan Aruch. So you see the Shulchan Aruch? Hakoneh me oved kochavim. Somebody who buys an item of a utensil, kitchen utensil from a non-Jew, klei su'udah shel matechet, if it's made out of metal, or shel zechuchit, or if it's made out of glass, or kelim hamitzupim be'ever mibifnim, af al pi shehem chadashim, tzarich lahatpilam b'mikveh. You need to dip them in a mikveh. So what do we need to dip in a mikveh? Any item that's made out of metal or glass.
Yeah.
Okay. ויש אומרים דכלים המצופים בעבר אפילו בפנים די יתבוא בלא ברכה וכן נוהגים. Now we have a minhag nowadays. We have a minhag nowadays. What's not included? In the olden days, utensils were made out of 4 materials. They were made out of glass. Glass we dip in a mikveh. They build metal. Metal we dip in a mikveh. The third one is wood. If something's made out of wood, we do not dip in a mikveh. So if you get a salad bowl or something, anything made out of wood doesn't get dipped in a mikveh. And the fourth one is clay, like plates. If you have a plate. Porcelain, yes. Now there's a debate. Even, let's say you get this is a glass mug, so this one's obviously wood, but sometimes you get a mug made out of clay. Now, I don't know very much about mugs, but apparently sometimes these mugs, in order to make sure they stay clean, they have a glaze of glass on the inside. Do you know about that? Plates, and because of that glaze of glass that may be there, may not be there, what we do is we dip plates in the mikveh, but we make without a bracha. So you dip glass with a bracha, you dip metal with a bracha, you don't dip wood. And concerning clay, pottery, you dip it in the mikveh, but without making a bracha.
So it's ceramic.
Ceramic, exactly.
It's not the glass itself, it's enamel or glaze. It's like a thin layer of something that is like spread with the what's the name of the you paint with it, the brush.
Yeah.
So it's like in a liquid form, and then it solidifies in the oven that is made.
And that
so it's not glass itself. I have a friend who did clay things. So.
How interesting! How interesting. Okay. So, but if you know for sure that it's only clay, then you don't need to. Clay doesn't need to be dipped in, but because we're worried about this glaze and not sure exactly what materials are in the glaze, therefore we do dip cheres, clay, in the mikveh because of the glaze.
Yeah, but Rabbi, why? Rabbi, why you have to put but not say sometimes blessing, no blessing?
Because really the only things we need to dip are metal and glass. And therefore, when you dip something metal, you make a bracha. If you dip something glass, you make a bracha. So really, clay, you probably don't need to dip it. But the rabbi said it doesn't harm, so just dip it. Dip this cheres because of this glaze, and we're not sure exactly this material, but don't make a blessing on it, because if you were to make a blessing on it, it may be a invalid blessing. You can only make a blessing on something that certainly needs a blessing. That's metal and glass. But something that I'm not certain that needs a blessing, I dip it without making a blessing. So what a lot of people do is they might have like whenever I dip my porcelain, when I dip something made out of cheres, I might keep like a knife or a fork or something metal,
just to say the bracha.
And then I don't know if people, but often when people buy stuff, they don't just buy one item. So if you're dipping, normally like to go to a mikveh is a bit of a, it's an outing. You don't, because you have to bring things with you. So once you go into the mikveh, try to make sure that wherever you go, you bring a metal, and then you solve the problem. But if you haven't got, then you just dip without making a bracha.
And plastic is the same thing as.
So
porcelain?
plastic is no blessing on plastic. You
No-
don't
no
need to,
blessing, yeah,
nothing.
that's what I mean.
No, you don't dip plastic at all.
No.
No, the plastic doesn't need to be dipped
Yeah, but I mean,
because it's a material that didn't exist at the time.
Yeah. I read the book about kashrut like a week ago. I finished the entire book, and in my notes it says that plastic is dipped without a bracha, so maybe it's a different approach. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, but it was in the book. I don't know what to say.
Oh, that's really
I just
interesting.
asked because
Oh, that's it.
it states that.
Well, that's very. It could be that plastic has got more complicated since I studied this material. But assuming that it's pure plastic, you would not make a bracha on pure plastic. You wouldn't dip it. You wouldn't dip. You'd no need to. It's like wood that you would not make a blessing.
Okay, so you don't need, but it's not prohibited, or is it
It's unnecessary.
unnecessary? Okay.
That's
So-
very tricky too, because let's say I don't have any other kli.
You don't have what? Sorry.
I don't have any other kli. I just have plastic,
And
I put the milk in the plastic, like the halal
Yeah.
product in the plastic. Then I throw up the halal, and then I wash it like normal wash. And then I wanted to put meat on it. How can I do that?
You can't kasher plastic.
So it's not possible to put meat on it.
No. If I have a plastic plate and I used it for milk, I can't use it subsequently for meat.
Because will it absorb the taste?
Because we got the halachic discussion. It's very interesting. The halachic discussion of kashrut only discusses materials that existed at the time of the Talmud. So plastic was never discussed. So we take the strictest approach to plastic. Meaning, I know that, let's say, this thing about you can heat something up, dipping in hot water, and you can kasher it.
Yeah.
So we know that works for metal.
Mhm.
Glass is a complicated. We won't get into glass now, but it doesn't work for cheres. So if, let's say, I had a plate, a china plate, and I use it for a chicken soup, right? I can't then dip that china plate in boiling water. The truth is, I don't know would it survive if you dip it. Would it crack if you dip it in boiling water? But it doesn't matter. Even if it wouldn't crack, you're not allowed to dip it in.
Yeah.
This principle of extraction works for metal. For glass is a machlokes if it works for glass. And cheres, that is to say clay, we assume it doesn't. We are the Gemara tells us that cheres also doesn't work. And plastic, we assume that plastic is like clay. Just like clay, you can't dip it in order to kasher it. So too plastic, you can't dip it to kasher it.
So it's like a micro pores in the.
Correct.
So you can extract the.
Correct.
When,
Exactly. Okay. So we've said until now, we've got three types of things. We've got glass and metal that I dip with a blessing. Then we have clay, which I dip without a blessing. And then we have wood and plastic that no dipping and no blessings. Everything clear to everybody? Okay. I don't know, I was going to add something, but I can't remember what it is now. Okay, so that's the end of part 2. So we've looked at the source, which was from the battle, the end of the Torah. Then we looked at the Talmud, how the Talmud developed it and told us about the mikveh and the 40 sa'ah. And then we went to the Shulchan Aruch, and then we've summarized the Shulchan Aruch about 3 types of vessels. Is that clear? The bracha that I forgot to mention, it's mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. The bracha that we make is Asher Kiddushanu Mitzvotav, that you commanded us, Vitzivanu, Al Tfilat Kalim. If I'm doing more than one item, Al Tfilat Kalim. If I'm doing one item, Al Tfilat Kli, on this one item. Is that clear to everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay, now I want to look at like the symbolism. What's the symbolism of this dipping in the mikveh? So I want to talk about 2 minutes about the item being dipped in the mikveh, and then 2 minutes about the mikveh. Is that okay with everybody? So, first of all, if you look at the Pinine Halacha, this is Rabbi Melamed. He's got a very nice introduction to this laws. He says like this, at the bottom of the first page, Megamat mitzvat tefillah, the point of dipping items in the mikveh, leromem et hakli mimadrega shel kli shenoad la'achila stamit, שהטבע והחולשות האנושיות מלוות אותו, אל מדרגה של כלי שנועד להאכיל מאכלים שעל ידם יוכלו ישראל להתקשר אל ערכי התורה. He says, what is this kli? Just maybe I didn't explain this earlier. The kalim that require tefillah are any item that comes in direct contact with food. Mm-hmm. So let's say I buy a stender over there. A stender doesn't need to be dipped in a mikveh. But if I have a container for my cereal, or a spoon, or a pot, or a pan, anything that comes in direct contact with food does require tefillah. You follow? Why? So he says, because eating can be viewed in different ways. Eating can be viewed as a base human urge. You know, there's some people that can lose their dignity when they're starving hungry. They just like stuff themselves with something. You follow? So I can view eating as almost like an animalistic sort of urge, or I can see it as something of a higher purpose. Mm-hmm. And when I take my plate and I dip my plate in a mikveh, do you know what I'm saying? I'm saying this isn't just a plate. This is a tool to give me food, which will give me energy to be able to continue all the holy things that I do. So you see this item over here. This is a cup, right? That somebody dipped in a mikveh. This isn't just a cup. This is a vessel through which Fabricio, the Holy Tzaddik, was able to provide goodness. You follow? This is like a mitzvah machine. You follow? It's not just like I'm thirsty, like just, like down a cup. This is a dignified vehicle through which I can do my service of God. And by taking my food items and dipping them in a mikveh, I'm elevating the eating experience to a more spiritual one. You follow? So that's the purpose of the mitzvah. I'm going to continue reading. Here. Mitzvah zo, this mitzvah, hi achad, is one of the mitzvot sheno'adu liyached et achilatam shel Yisrael ka'achila sheyesh ba emunah, kedusha uvracha. It's one of the mitzvot through which I elevate my eating experience to avodat Hashem. Like when I make a bracha before I eat, a shulchan Shabbat. The shulchan Shabbat, this isn't just a meal. This is a connection to Shabbat Kodesh. I'm eating this meal in order to have a taste of the world to come. You follow? So there are many mitzvot through which we take the base act of eating, and we elevate the base act of eating into an angelic activity. So this is another example of taking this base act and turning it into something holy. That's why we make a bracha. And that's why we also eat kosher food, and we don't eat non-kosher. There's also certain food that's only for Cohn, other food only for a Levi, and other ones for those people who are less advantaged than we are. Some food that was to be eaten in Yerushalayim, that's the Ma'as Hasheni. Mitzvah tfilat kelim no'ada letaher et hakli metuma hativuka ba'achilas tamid. So by dipping it in the mikveh, I'm purifying this vessel from just being a lowly way of transferring fluid from a cup into a human body. But rather it is like rejuvenating my soul to allow me to continue to do mitzvot. Does that make sense to you? And that's the symbolism of dipping it in the mikveh. Okay, that's it. That's the Pinine Halacha. Before we get to the final piece, which is the significance of the mikveh. Okay, I'm going to come to this in 1 minute. Before we come to the mikveh, I just want to ask you, there is one interesting item that is very complicated to dip it in the mikveh. There's some items, let's say like a toaster. You know, like a toaster. If you were to take a toaster and dip it in the mikveh, so it would be an ex-toaster. Or if you had I know, like all the, an electrical machine that I use that has metal in it, that I use it for, and I were to dip it in a mikveh, would not be a very good thing to do for this item. So what do I do? Because you have to dip things in a mikveh before you use them.
Yeah, I have 3 solutions from the best to worst listed here. So
Oh, you're really doing very well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So do you want to share?
I'm waiting for you to. It's your shiur, not mine.
No, but okay. Well, I'm going to share with you one solution, and then maybe you'll share the other 2 solutions.
Other 2 from the. I mean the 5th is the worst because you don't dip. It says don't dip anything that is electrical, but probably not a good solution. So say your solution first, and then I.
So the simplest solution, if possible, the simplest solution is to turn the item from a non-Jewish item to a Jewish item. So if, let's say, I have a kettle, what some people do is they loosen one screw. In the olden days when I was little, even not when I was little, not that long ago, when we would buy items, the items would come without a plug.
Mm-hmm.
And because the items would come without a plug, when I put the plug on it, I was turning an unuseful item and rendering that a useful item. So let's say when I went to the shop and bought a kettle and it doesn't have a plug on it, so it's a useless kettle. It's not a kettle. It's half a kettle because there's no plug on it.
Yeah.
And then I would put the plug on the kettle. When I put the plug on the kettle, I'm completing the kettle. I'm turning the almost kettle into a kettle. But when did this kettle transform from being an almost kettle to a kettle? In my house. And therefore it became a Jewish kettle. And because it became a Jewish kettle, therefore it doesn't need dipping in a mikveh. You follow? So what some people do is, it gets harder and harder nowadays, as things get more and more sophisticated, is to twiddle, to make it not work. And then, just like unscrew a little bit something. Where there's a screw, unscrew something. So then it becomes an almost toaster, almost kettle, whatever it is. And then when I tighten it again, oh, now it's a kettle again. And now it works. So that's one solution. You hear that solution?
Yeah. No. It's the first time.
Huh?
It's the first time.
Yeah, that's the first time for me. I have like 5, and none of it is.
Did you hear that solution?
No.
I mean, you heard it and you understand it now, though.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to
I
you?
understand it, but it's the first time, really.
Okay, that's the best solution. That's the ideal solution.
Yeah.
It could be that in the olden days when I used to buy stuff, they were always with loot. It was much easier to do it.
Yeah.
It could be that nowadays when you buy things, we haven't bought so many electrical things for a while now, that it's harder to do that nowadays because they all come with plugs and there's nothing as loose.
Yeah, it's like very clean looking.
it all comes. So maybe what worked once doesn't work so well. There's one more solution, a second solution.
Rabbi, the first one is like half the broken piece.
What?
No, just one screw. You can just unscrew before giving it to a Jew, and the Jew just screws the screw to the toaster, and it becomes like.
Or the Jew can unscrew and screw.
Yep.
Let's say I buy.
Yep.
I'm a Jew. I buy the toaster. I unscrew one little thing.
So you can do both things.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, I do it at home. It's not a toaster anymore. It's an almost toaster.
Okay.
And then I tighten it again. You follow? Does that make sense?
Oh wow.
No, I do it all at home. You follow?
It's like a loophole, I think. It's like, it seems like a loophole because you have a toaster and you just do
Exactly.
Half
Yes,
toaster
you're right. You're right. You're right.
is-
But the alternative is to put the toaster in the water, and that's not going to work.
Absolutely not.
There's another solution. I don't know if you've ever heard this. I don't know if this works. I haven't read it anywhere. I heard people say it, but I haven't seen it written by anybody. And that is, there is, if you remember, we said a kli cheres. Kli cheres is a kli that comes from the earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
A kli cheres doesn't need to be dipped in a mikveh. You follow?
So what can we do?
Now, I guess this you'll like this one. When I plug a machine into the wall, you know you've got like the over here, so it's got through. One of them is the earth button, as I'm like connecting it to, like what makes it the kli is the electricity that's in it, and that comes through all these wires. And I'm like connecting the kli to become like part of the earth. You follow? And therefore, when it's plugged in and part of the earth, it doesn't need to be dipped in a mikveh. No, I've never seen that written down. I've heard that one.
I have something like this here.
Okay, so go on.
So some of the poskim say that if the device must be connected to the electricity, it does not have to be dipped in a mikveh. But the other stories with the things that are working with battery.
Yeah.
So things that are working with battery will have to be dipped. But what you said was like
Okay.
right here. Yeah. So if you plug it in, it's allowed not to dip it. So it's written somewhere.
Yes, yeah. Oh, great. And do you have more answers, more solutions?
Yes, the first one is connected to the first one that you mentioned. It's the best to give the kli to the Jewish technique who would unassemble it. Then you dip the things that are in contact with the food, and then give it again to the Jewish technique, and he will assemble it.
Oh, that is complicated.
It's complicated. The second thing is complicated as well, because you can just buy something, give it to a non-Jewish person, and every time that you want to use it, you just borrow it. So you don't have to make it
That's
Jewish. It's for some reason it's like this. And the third solution that was not mentioned yet is that if something is in the contact with food, must be dipped, but the rest of the device does not have to be. So the blender, you can just dismantle the
Right.
thing
Right.
that is blending, and the other side you just leave.
Excellent. Okay. Very interesting. I just want to tell you something very interesting about ownership of an item. So a few years ago, we went with a group from a yeshiva. We went on a wine tasting tour in the Golan. And we went on a wine tasting tour on the Golan. They gave everybody a wine glass to test the wine, right? Now, the wine glass belonged to the restaurant. So because the wine glass belongs to the restaurant, you don't need to toivel it. It's not yours, it's theirs. You follow?
Yeah.
But this particular winery has a little shtick. I mean, the wine glass, they must have done a calculation that it's more expensive for them to rinse out all the glasses. Each glass probably costs like 2 shekel. It's more expensive for them to hire somebody to wash out all the glasses than it is just to each person, when they finish the tour, to give that person the wine glass at the end of the tour. So we went on this tour of this winery, and you had a wine glass that you went and you took the wine glass all the way through the tour. And each time you drank, they gave you a little bit of wine. Then at the end of the tour, they said, this wine glass is our gift to you. And as soon as they gave it to us as a gift, from then onwards you can't use it anymore, and then you have to toivel it in the mikveh.
Mm-hmm.
You follow? So what we did was actually, because it was in the Golan, we went from there to the Kinneret and went for a swim, and then everybody took their wine glasses with them for the swim. Everyone dipped their wine glass in the Kinneret and then took them home again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but do you understand how that happened?
Yeah.
Because there were 2 stages. At the beginning, it didn't belong to me, but as soon as it was given to me, so then I had to do a tefillah kelim. Okay, Joy, I just want to read one point about the mikveh. There's 2 pages. There's a whole page on this. I want to read just one paragraph. Okay. submerging in a pool of water, this is a fourth paragraph, for the purpose not of using the water's physical cleansing, but expressly to symbolize a state of soul, is a statement as once deeply spiritual and immensely compelling. No other symbolic act can so totally embrace a person as being submerged in water, which must touch and cover evolution, every strand of hair, every birthmark. No other religious act is so freighted with meaning as this one, which touches every aspect of life and proclaims a total commitment to a new idea and a new way of life as it swallows up the old and gives birth to the new. This experience, of course, women dip in the mikveh, married women go to the mikveh. The final stage of the conversion process, Be'ezrat Hashem, should go smoothly, is to dip in the mikveh. And this dipping over here is such a beautifully symbolic idea of purification. When you take something and you dip it in the mikveh, if you take this sentence and you put it together with the words of Rabbi Melamed, who spoke about elevating the act of eating into a spiritual act, we come to a very beautiful, philosophy of our relationship with food, our relationship with the world around us. The food is a great, great blessing, and the mitzvot that we have associated with food, brachot, kashrut, hachsharat kelim, what we studied today, tfilat kelim, all of these mitzvot are there in order to allow us to elevate what could be just a physical indulgence into a spiritual endeavor of appreciating God's amazing world, and the responsibility of being recharged and allowing us to continue in our avodat Hashem, and the elevation of our eating process to refueling towards avodat Hashem. Tfilat kelim is a critical aspect of allowing us to frame our eating in that way. Yishar koach to all of you. We'll pause there.